All right, thank you. My name is Oyebanji Akins. I'm already laughing for so many reasons because she's gonna definitely make me laugh. But we know other person I have. I would say a friend that I've turned to more than just a friend. And when I say that, I mean in terms of having somebody that see life in the same way you see life. And it's been wonderful coming across us since last year. We never thought we were gonna have this section actually. But when fate have a way of moving things, it will definitely bring it back to you. And I think this was pre-planned and its destiny is gonna happen. And the main reason why we have CTD among blacks is to definitely connect all the dots all around the world. So I have with no other person with me. I have T, but I would say the full name is Twanda. So Twanda, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to have you. It took a while, not because you're not ready, but I know you have a lot of things you're doing. So it's a privilege that I have you. Out of no time of your time, you try to create a time so that we can have this section. And I definitely believe anybody that might be listening to us anywhere in the world would definitely gain something. So the first thing I'm trying to ask you is, when you're young, how do you perceive to see Africans? And when you're grown up now, in terms of coming across somebody like me, what has been the experience? When somebody, an American that doesn't have the grace that I might think just like you, that want to know, that want to use your own experience to be vulnerable enough for you to tell us how it was back when you're young and how it has been now to where you've been even having to see now in this podcast right now. So tell me your view.
Yeah, I can share that. So first, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm
You're welcome.
glad to be here. It's a privilege, and I'm really grateful to be here.
Thank you.
We've had many conversations, but to just be able to share um, and answer the question, I think that since we started talking, and as I think about it more, when I was younger, it was just a huge disconnect. So growing up, when I pictured Africa, I always pictured like tribal Africa, like a village, more like naked
Country.
people,
Really?
naked people, gardening. Like I never pictured Africa like an actual like the cities and like the different countries. Like I knew Africa as a continent, like the way we learned it, but the way it was depicted was more of like tribal, if that makes sense. Beating and just more living off the land. It was never depicted like you guys lived in actual like cities and like
Wow.
actual communities. It was always like in the bush, so to speak.
Wait, was it like the movie you guys watch or how they've been how do most Americans have that picture in their mind? Because I've seen people telling me like, do y'all use AC back? I'm like, wait, what do you think we use? They're like, I'm just saying because I was raised to think you guys don't even wear clothes. You guys wear with
Absolutely.
barefoot, and I'm like, nah, that's totally wrong.
Yeah, because like when I remember being in elementary and when you go to the library and you pick out books, like some of the guys, the younger boys, they would pick out books on Africa, but they didn't pick out the books to like learn. They picked them out because the 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 pictures in the books were always depicting like bush people, so to speak, or like tribal. So you see like women breastfeeding the babies. So the boys were looking at the pictures more for the breast.
Oh,
Versus-
that's one of the most biggest picture back in Africa though.
Yeah, yeah,
And for us, we try to interpret mother like it's just like motherly love.
yes.
When you see a mother trying to breastfeed a baby in the picture, it's like the mother is connected to the baby.
Yes, but growing up, that was always the photos that you saw. You always saw like naked people. You always saw just like the guys, males covered up. You never saw
Having like big earrings.
yeah, big earrings, the corks in the earrings, tribal like the tribal rituals.
Okay.
So that's how it was for me growing up.
So how was it now that the internet has helped in terms of, even though I know somebody like you really manage your internet so well, but I've talked to you where you watch a lot of movies, you do a lot of research about Africa. We've talked a lot at deep. What now changed that makes you inspired? Like you want to go to Africa, you want to know people. A lot of people might not know you, but I know you so much. Like you've done so much research about Africa that people can start telling Africa and you.
Yeah, what changed for me was just the fact that I've never been to Africa before, but just the natural comparisons um as far as the internet's concerned, the contrasting as far as the internet concerned, like I feel like we are more connected in a lot of ways that social media doesn't depict. And for me personally, I think that what changed my perspective prior to meeting you was just my journey, where I came from, and wanting to know more about Africa. And as I researched, I started to realize that it wasn't just in the bush, it wasn't just tribal, like there was actual cities, people do live in houses with AC. So it wasn't what was portrayed. So that just intrigued me even more.
Thank you for that. For me, I'm gonna share my experience for the purpose of people that might be listening to this. I always tell most African American that one of the things that was being given us back home wasn't we don't have a lot of magazines, and if we have a lot of magazines, more like the Playboy magazines, but things that we talk that we know about African American was more of showing them in a movie where they're more like doing prostitute or drug dealer. So we don't have anything concrete big enough. There's no really much of black role model in America back then. If you're to see, it's gonna be maybe in the rap world, and when you take that out, a little bit of Martin Luther King, and when you take Martin Luther King out, not everybody really know about Malcolm X, and you got to read books for you to even think about Malcolm X. So for us coming from home, from Africa down to America, is more like a lot of us have been subjected to how they want you to look at African Americans. So even though they are not like that, you're already projected of what you think of them, and that affects how most people interact with African Americans. And I think, like I always tell people, in America, it's hard to see African Americans and African having a conversation unless it's got to lead to a relationship. You don't see them doing business. You don't see them just having a normal conversation without expecting nothing out of it. And if they do, both parties are having some subliminal way of thinking of how they perceive them. An African, just like how you said, when you have too much of somebody like you is different because you did your own research. Imagine an African American that never tried to research and nothing, and all they've seen is all those pictures while they're in high school. That's still how they're gonna look at me, no matter how I dress. And I think that's the gap that we're having, not having people sitting down to have a normal conversation to just hear them out.
I agree. I totally agree. I think that these conversations need to be had because my perception, um, just the way things are depicted, like you said, just to speak to that part, you see this like this social media, and even like with movies, the way things are shown, it almost makes you scared of anything African, and everything's about like guns and being taken over, and villages being taken over. And if you aren't from those areas, or haven't been privy to visit those areas, you can believe some of that stuff, and then to not be connected with anyone directly from Africa, from, and regardless of what country.
Yes.
I think that that's the disconnect also. Social media drives it, but I think we also drive it also, because the way things are depicted in Africa for you guys, for Black Americans, that's not so. We're taught certain things based off of being Black American, but a lot of us, including myself, like we are longing to
go back to
connect. Yeah, to connect. I mean, to be able to, grow up and live in America, and for me personally, to not know where you're from, that's a huge disconnect. And I don't think many Africans understand how we really look to Africa as a whole for some type of connection. And most of us want to be connected, not just to pretend, but I mean, could you imagine being from a country or a continent and to not really know where
exactly.
you're from?
That's deep, though. I think that's deep, where I can say for myself, I'm lucky to have a lot of African Americans as friends. And even though I have them, there's still some things I will never understand how it's been affected in their world. Because this is like generation to generation to generation. It didn't just so most of the time for Africans when they're in America, they're quick to talk to Americans like stop using the past story to judge your life. But what most Africans fail to understand is if you're not in their thoughts, you wouldn't even understand. And that says a lot about somebody like you looking at me that I'm from Nigeria. And you sitting right in front of me, you can't even tell your story like how you want it.
Correct.
And that's a big gap because a lot of Africans don't get to understand the value of being able to connect with an American. And even if they do, there's a subjected way of how Africans don't deeply care. They just feel like if I can come from Africa to come to this place and still make it, you don't got no reason to complain. But then what about the mental state of the person you don't want them to complain?
Absolutely.
I've met people in America, like I've met a close person also like that. That mom left her when she was young and she has to leave. She was the first person that showed me what's this house called that they put people free of charge.
Like a shelter.
Yes, she's the one that ever showed me that. And she took me down to that place to see all those places to understand how people live. And she was like, even while those are happening, a lot of things happen that she can't just say while you live in that place. And managing herself to, fall in love with somebody and she was taken advantage of, that she ended up having a special kid. So imagine having a special kid with no mom, with no dad. And there you are, you kind of max it up like you're fine. And coming across an African that never tried to listen to you, that just prejudge you quick, and that you could tell, it just take that experience away from somebody like that. Like, I don't want to be around Africans and I think I'm glad we're having this conversation because my next question is to ask you, like, what do you think in your own world, making research about Africans, knowing who you are, what are the things you think we could do that could help ourselves? Have you ever thought about something like that? Like, how do you perceive to say like Africans and African Americans could work in a way to help the next generation? Because what we're doing right now is not for us anymore. It's for the people that are younger than us that are having the same experience, but they're looking for something to listen to help them to guide themselves.
I think that these conversations, obviously, putting the information out there, and I think that not only do more of these conversations need to be had, but I think just understanding, and I can't speak for all Black Americans, all Black women, I can't speak for them, but I think that having these conversations and truly trying to understand the point of view and where we're coming from. And like I mentioned earlier, to be Black and to be in America, to not know where you've been displaced from, for Africans to understand that we are a lot more similar and a lot more connected than they depict in the media. It's just certain things and certain mannerisms that we've discussed that we have. And here I've grown up in the United States my whole life, and you're from Nigeria, but we can connect on a certain level, which speaks volumes. So I think that more of these conversations need to be had, and I think that truly understanding the experience. It's one thing for someone from Africa to say, "Oh, well, forget about slavery, or don't worry about, why are you always bringing the past up? You got to move forward." But at the same time, if you haven't experienced that,
You will never understand.
you'll never understand it. And it runs deep for a lot of Black Americans. And to feel like you already are in a place that you don't necessarily belong and wasn't built for you, and then to want Africa to embrace you and to not have that, that's even more lonely. So just to be able to have a platform to speak about this, I feel like more of this needs to happen. More Africans and more Black Americans coming together in whatever way, whatever platforms, because that's truly the only way. We have to share experiences to really know how we perceive one another. There's a lot that I didn't know about Nigeria in particular that you shared with me that was mind blowing.
For real?
Had we not had those conversations, you wouldn't know.
Uh.
So I think that just this right here, what we're doing.
Thank you very much for that. I think from my own hand, what I will say as a Nigerian being in America, we're already bridging the gap through music. Music has been a tool now that I think a lot of African Americans and Africans are becoming more featuring themselves in our songs. But then I'm kind of worried because over time, the people that control the music, there's an intention behind that. So I see that not going for so long because that can be manipulated over time. Because I follow a lot of American hip hop artists where they will tell you like, this is what the record label wants you to do more. They don't want you to do this more. They want you to bring out this kind of music to control the mind of people. So that might be something I'm kind of worried for. But the other thing I think, with the way the world is going, with podcasts becoming a big thing, AI becoming a big thing, I think it would be nice if people started doing more genuinely connection, not for the virus purposes, not just because I just want to talk. Because if you ever get everything set up to the level where you're about to say start, action, record, that means you're about to make an impact. And I think I tell somebody, I said, Black people might not know we literally control social media around the world. We're the reason social media exists.
Absolutely.
We're the musicians, we're the fashionists, we're the content creators. We are the who is who.
Trendsetters.
When you take Black people out of social media, there's nothing fun about it. Black people are the one that really, and I'm seeing us not understanding the benefit we have now, that we're only putting so much wrong thing into the future that when the next generation come and they play everything happened in 2024, they're like, that's a lie. That can be Black people. So I think for me, it's something we got to be conscious of, being intentional about connection, especially when you meet somebody from the other world.
Absolutely.
If an African meet an African American, be intentional about the connection. Because if you're not intentional about it, you're bridging the gap that might have helped a lot of generations to come.
Absolutely.
Because when you do the wrong thing, you took that person away off the grid. Like, the person might not want to try the game. And if they are lucky enough to try the game, they're not going in with a full mind of trying to embrace it. They're going in with a skeptical mind of, I've been through this and I don't want to do it again. So I think that's what I would say for me. So my next question is, have you ever tried any Nigerian food? It's a common question people ask. Have you tried Nigerian food?
I have, yes.
So what was your own experience trying Nigerian food?
My experience trying it was different.
In terms of?
Flavor, taste. I enjoyed it, but it was different because I've been used to eat soul food and like American food this whole time, so it was different. But I actually enjoyed it.
So was it because you are more inquisitive about knowing a lot about Africans?
Yes.
So was it a reason, or was it just a natural you of just trying to embrace the food?
I was naturally trying to embrace the food. The more I started to study about Africa and different countries, the more I felt a certain connection that I had. So that's where it came from, and I started to try.
So let me ask you this, without coming across somebody like me or Africans that you've met, what are the things you think you know about Africans that changed when you met somebody like me that you now see different from how you see Africans?
I feel like there's no difference in us. I feel like the only major difference is languages, dialect,
our choice of words,
our choice of words, and how we speak to them. I think even with that, I've learned to make sure that I have the proper definitions for certain things, just to make sure that I'm even being culturally appropriate, if you want to label it that way. My mannerisms. But I don't think there's any difference. Being around like the few Nigerians, and like I said, I don't speak for all Black Americans, and you don't speak for all Nigerians.
Yep.
But there is no difference. When I see you, I don't see Nigerian.
Yeah, you always tell me. You always tell me that.
Yeah.
Every time Nigerian, why you say you're Nigerian? Oh, you about to do it again?
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and I'm about to ask you some questions.
That's fine.
So I promise that it's not gonna be hard. It's just gonna be simple, straight questions. What do you think if it happens where there's a kind of connection where a lot of Nigerians can come more to America? Do you think a lot of Africans American will start going back to Africa or no? Like if we have more Nigerians being around, do you think that will motivate a lot of Africans to want to start going back? Because a lot of
So.
Africans are now going to Ghana though.
Well, I think so because in just meeting you, I would visit Nigeria. I want to visit Nigeria. I will visit Nigeria. So I think so.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, because I think that it's more about just knowing that we're welcome. A lot of Black Americans don't feel that they're welcome.
Was it about character or how?
I think it's just what's been instilled
In our mind.
in our minds. It's kind of like the thing we spoke about, and not to digress, but even like in the dating world, how Nigerian men are depicted, how Black women are depicted, how Nigerian women are depicted, the disconnect or the quote unquote hatred that Nigerian women versus Black women have, like all of those stereotypical nonsense reasons create a thing.
So your belief is the more we hear, we'll be able to have more people to really have a diversified way of getting things, not just in one way where everybody think, being stereotyped. That makes sense. So my last question is this. What is that thing you would like to ask any Nigerian that you think you've never been able to ask them? Do you ever have any question in your mind like you feel like, you know what I mean? When I go to Nigeria, I want to ask you guys this. You did ask me about some movies though.
Yeah, I asked you about movies, and then my one of the first questions I had was even though Nigerians live in the city, where's this bush stereotype coming from? Is there a village and a city, like as far as attached to the culture itself?
So if I'm getting your question right, basically of what has been projected to Americans, it's more like, the bush, which in America they call it the countryside. So the countryside, in our own hand back home, we call it village. And I think when colonization thing was happening, that was how they left home. Now it wasn't like we don't have the city, but to the people that left, which I want to put it that way, they left because they create that city. We're more like the countryside. I think Africa was developed on the countryside. And when the colonization happened, the white people came in, they were able to create their own life into our own world. So when they left, there's no way some people pick it up, which I'm not sure, this is just me, my own reasoning. They never thought something that would be picked up by Black people. So when we pick it up, become our way of life, and we still have opportunity of keeping our countryside. Now, for me being in America, I've seen the countryside, I've seen the city side. It's just the same like how it is back home. And we value our countryside than the city side, but now that there's internet, the Gen Z world, they value the city side more than the countryside, if that makes sense. So it has always been like how being projected, but that doesn't mean we're not growing. So we've outgrown this in a very long time. But I'm gonna say this: the most problem African Americans are having is what Africans are having. What we're being told how to look at other people. An American gave me Jim Crow? And when I read it, Jesus Christ. It makes me to understand a lot of things that I don't understand. And I think a lot of African Americans, a lot of Africans have never read it.
Absolutely.
And when you don't read it, you will always have a wrong impression about Black people in America. And I could say this now with my knowledge. I think part of it was given to people back home too. Because if you really read part of it, how they said you gotta look at your other people And that's what we bring down to America. But like you said, I think the more we have conversation to be consciously open-minded, I don't think it's just gonna be a one-day growth. I think it's just years upon years. When I went, I'm not sure maybe you've been to Atlanta. When I went to Atlanta to, they have this museum where you put your hand down and they let you listen to where Martin Luther King, everybody was being beat in the balls. If you experience it, for me, I just realize what a lot of people have sacrificed for somebody like me to be in America. It's way deeper than how coming here and I don't care who it is to talk down of them. Part of those race was still the people that fight for somebody like me to be here.
Absolutely.
So it's a good thing for a lot of Africans that come to America to go to those places to experience some things. So just realize that this is real. This is not like fiction. This is not like somebody creating a movie. This is real people that some kind of way they're trying to find how to connect themselves back.
Yes.
And I'm listening to you.
And I think that that's important because when I was speaking earlier about the Black quote unquote experience, or just the disconnecting growing up, you really want to know for myself where you came from. I don't think for an African to say or to lessen the value or the understanding of the experience that we've been through. I think that that sometimes has made me angry in ways because to be ripped from where you're from, brought here, beaten into submission, and everything else that came along with slavery, I don't think that you can downplay that. And the aftermath of that. And for me, that's the part that I would hope that more Africans would try to understand.
So let me say this. I'll use my own personal experience, and I don't want to drag you too much into the time. I will say this, and we're just gonna say one more last thing. What I will answer to that is I want to use. I'm not gonna say I'm talking on behalf of Africans. I'm just sharing my own experience to let you know that people state of mind go deeper than how you think it is. A lot of Nigerians doesn't even understand, Africans doesn't even understand the effect of what they say to people. They just say it because that's what we came into the country and we realize people are doing, and we just tell them to look at it that way. And one of the reasons is because when people like us come and we're able to secure ourselves, get a job, it's just a quick way of looking at you like, why can't you do it? But then, like I said, having a lot of African Americans around me made me to realize that looking at people that doesn't able to get a job is deeper than how you think it is.
Totally.
Like, there's a lot that might have happened in their world that when they break it down, you now say.
So it makes you look at this whole, they're just being lazy. Why can't you try? Why aren't you motivated? It's way deeper than that.
I think that's a conversation where we got to bring like a couple of different African Americans and a couple of African Nigerians, but they are all in a state of mind that they are conscious about their growth.
Yes.
Because if you don't have people that are already in that level of thought, people just gonna go home being hateful more. Because we won't be conscious of how people feel when they talk. They just want to express how they feel. So for me, I think the only thing I could advise anybody listening to this out there is to just make sure that your intention, like I always tell people in my podcast, I said, for every connection, there's an intention. So be purposefully have good intention when you meet people, especially if you're African Americans that you come across as Africans, or if you're African that come across African American in America. You got to be extremely open-minded to not to prejudge them, but to listen with the purpose of saying you just want to know them, not because you want to manipulate or you want to talk down or you want to feel like you know more than them, or you want to feel like they don't have nothing going on in their world. Because somebody that doesn't have no job for many years can be the one to put you on something that will get you a job in America.
Absolutely.
Because I've experienced things like that. And I always tell people, like, you just don't understand how powerful connection goes. Just because you look down somebody doesn't mean they are not smart, doesn't mean they don't know people. It's a lot of things that might surround their life where they can't do the job. You just don't know because you never take your time to ask them like, oh, what's up? What happened? And even if they're telling you, you're more passively, they could tell you're judging them while they're telling a story. So what's the point of them telling the next person? Because they already see how you see them. So that is for me for that. My last thing I would say is for anybody that might be listening to us, this is CTD Among Blacks, and you could check us on our website, www.ctdamongblacks. You could check us on Apple Podcast, on Amazon, on YouTube, on Spotify, and on iHeart Radio. Everything, you just got to search CTD Among Blacks. And like I always tell people, the meaning of CTD Among Blacks is just connecting all the dots among all blacks. And we are here live today in Chicago with no other person than T. And she's been giving me, sharing. I really appreciate you being able to, go deep in those conversations. Not because we have to, but this is just a way of creating a platform. We don't know who might listen to this. We don't know who are hungry out there that want to, find some answers to some things in their mind. I'm hoping this could trigger somebody to be intentional about what they're doing and not just to listen to this and, BS it, but to be able to just find something meaningful in their life to relate with it. So my last question is, when are you going to Nigeria?
Soon.
All right. What would you like to say for the last statement before I let you go for this particular episode?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Twanda, for coming. It was a privilege having you on the podcast. We really appreciate you coming and, giving your insight. Hopefully, I could drag you back one more time, as many as I can, in some other, wonderful discussion that we could have. But it's a privilege having somebody from this world, from this side. I've did a couple of interviews from African American, but yours was different. Just really went into, things that people don't think is very, very important, especially for the race, especially for the culture, and especially for being alive as a black people. And like I said to somebody, I said, black is beautiful only when you see yourself being beautiful. And if you don't see yourself beautiful, it's going to be hard for you to believe somebody else is beautiful. So with that being said, I just want to tell whoever that's listening to this, like I always say, it doesn't have to make sense now, whatever you're doing. But whatever you're doing, if it's definitely giving you happiness, please keep doing it. Don't bother about anybody. Just keep telling yourself it doesn't have to make sense, but just give me some times in the future. They will definitely come back and reference you like, oh, that's what you're doing back then. I didn't know. So please, wherever you might be, whatever dream it is, just keep doing it. Don't bother about anybody else. It doesn't have to make sense to them. But just please keep connecting all the dots and make sure you try to bridge the gap as much as you could. Thank you and see you on the next episode. Stop pulling.